The digital clock on the dashboard read 10:37 p.m. as I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot of Meridian Publishing. The building's sleek glass exterior reflected the amber glow of parking lot lights, making the 5-story structure look almost warm despite the October chill. I'd been home for almost 3 hours when I realized my phone was missing, likely still charging at my desk where I'd left it during the afternoon rush to finalize layouts for tomorrow's deadline. Just in and out, I muttered to myself, fishing my security badge from my purse. The silence of an empty office building at night always unnerved me. I preferred Meridian during daylight hours, bustling with writers, editors, and the creative energy that had initially drawn me to publishing. As I approached the entrance, my attention drifted to the far corner of the lot. A familiar vehicle sat under one of the few working lights, a silver Audi, instantly recognizable as my husband Neil's car. My steps faltered. Neil was supposed to be at his brother's poker night. He'd texted me from there just before I discovered my phone was missing. But it wasn't just the presence of his car that made my blood run cold. It was who I could see inside it. Through the windshield, illuminated by the car's interior light, I could make out 2 silhouettes. One was unmistakably Neil. His broad shoulders and the way he gestured when he spoke were as familiar to me as my own reflection. The other was Vanessa Moore, my direct supervisor and the youngest executive editor in Meridian's 20-year history. I froze, half hidden behind a concrete column. Their heads were close together, and though I couldn't hear them, the intensity of their conversation was evident in their body language. Neither had noticed me yet. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched Vanessa reach out and place her hand on Neil's arm. The simple gesture carried an intimacy that sent a wave of nausea through me. I'd seen that same gentle touch before, at company events when Vanessa would laugh at Neil's jokes, at the holiday party when they'd ended up in deep conversation by the bar. I'd dismissed it then. Now, standing alone in the cold parking lot with my forgotten phone suddenly irrelevant, I couldn't dismiss anything anymore. 6 months earlier, I had been celebrating my promotion to senior layout editor at Meridian. After 5 years of late nights, impossible deadlines, and navigating office politics, I'd finally secured the position that would allow me to oversee the visual direction of the company's flagship magazines. To Elena Bennett, the woman who makes words look better than they deserve, Neil had toasted, raising his glass in our kitchen that night. He'd prepared a surprise dinner, complete with my favorite wine and a small jewelry box containing pearl earrings I'd admired weeks before. "You remembered," I'd said, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I notice everything about you." He'd kissed me then, and I remembered thinking how lucky I was. 12 years of marriage, and he could still make me feel like the 23-year-old graphic design graduate he'd met at a friend's gallery opening. Neil ran his own architectural visualization studio, creating renderings for development projects across the city. His work had been steadily growing over the past few years, and between his career and mine, our lives had fallen into a comfortable rhythm of shared successes and mutual support. The introduction of Vanessa Moore to that rhythm came 3 months after my promotion. Meridian hired her from a rival publishing house to shake up the editorial department. At 38, just 2 years older than me, she'd already made a name for herself in the industry for her bold vision and unapologetic approach to leadership. "She's exactly what we need around here," Charles Winters, the CEO, had announced during her introduction. "Someone who isn't afraid to break things that need breaking." I'd liked her immediately. Vanessa was direct but fair, stylish but not intimidating, and most importantly, she recognized good work when she saw it. Under her leadership, my layouts received more prominence, and she frequently requested me specifically for the company's highest-profile projects. "You have an eye for narrative," she'd told me after I reworked a cover story on urban renewal. "You don't just arrange text and images. You understand the story they're trying to tell." The praise had meant everything to me. I'd spent years feeling like my contributions were technical rather than creative, and Vanessa was the first person, in a leadership position who seemed to understand what I was trying to accomplish with my designs. Neil met Vanessa at the company's summer barbecue. I'd been pulled away to discuss an upcoming special edition with Charles, and when I returned, I found them engaged in animated conversation about the redevelopment of the Old Harbor District, a project Neil's firm was competing to visualize. "Your husband is brilliant," Vanessa had said later, as we helped clear away paper plates. "I've never heard anyone talk about architecture as a form of storytelling before. Usually it's all about materials and light." "That's why he's good at what he does," I'd replied, feeling a familiar pride. "He sees beyond the technical aspects." "You two are well matched that way," she'd said, and I'd taken it as a compliment. After that, Vanessa occasionally asked about Neil, and I thought nothing of it. When his firm won the Harbor project, I mentioned it during a meeting, and Vanessa suggested featuring his work in an upcoming issue on urban transformation. The assignment would have gone to one of our regular architecture writers, but Vanessa insisted on handling it personally. "I want to make sure we do it justice," she'd explained. "This could be good exposure for Neil's firm." I'd been grateful for her interest, seeing it as professional generosity rather than anything personal. The interview and photo shoot required several meetings between them, which I couldn't attend due to deadline pressures on other projects. Neil would come home energized from these sessions, full of stories about how Vanessa understood his vision in ways that other clients often missed. "She gets it," he'd say, his eyes bright with the particular excitement I recognized from whenever he felt truly seen for his work. "She asks the right questions." In retrospect, I should have recognized the signs. The late meetings that ran longer than scheduled. The texts that would make Neil smile at odd hours. The way he began to mention her in casual conversation. "Vanessa thinks," Vanessa said, Vanessa suggested. But I was consumed with my own projects and the increasing responsibility Vanessa kept placing on my shoulders. "I'm grooming you," she told me during my performance review, "for bigger things. The creative director is retiring next year, and I want you in consideration." I'd been so focused on this potential leap forward that I missed what was happening right in front of me. Until 3 weeks ago, when the first doubt crept in. We were hosting a dinner party for some of Neil's colleagues. I'd been in the kitchen plating dessert when I overheard one of them mention Vanessa's name to Neil in the living room. Ran into, "Your new friend at that planning commission meeting," the voice, belonging to Marcus, Neil's business partner, said teasingly. "She spoke very highly of you." There was a pause before Neil responded, his voice lower than usual. "She's Elena's boss, not just my friend, and she's been incredibly supportive of the firm." Sure, Marcus had replied, the smirk audible in his voice. "Very supportive." The conversation shifted as I entered with the dessert tray, but the exchange lodged itself in my mind. That night, I lay awake beside Neil, listening to his even breathing and wondering what Marcus had meant. What he might have seen or heard that I hadn't. The following week, Neil began staying later at the office. "Harbor project deadlines," he explained. The night I forgot my phone at work, he'd told me he was going to his brother's place for their monthly poker game. He'd kissed me distractedly on his way out, his mind already elsewhere. "Don't wait up," he'd said. "These games can run late." I'd spent the evening catching up on reading, and it was only when I went to set my alarm for the morning that I realized my phone wasn't in the house. I'd tried calling it from our landline, but it went straight to voicemail. Dead battery, most likely. After searching everywhere, I remembered charging it at my desk during a hectic afternoon meeting, and so I'd driven back to Meridian, expecting a quick retrieval, never imagining I'd find Neil's car in the parking lot, never expecting to see him deep in conversation with Vanessa, both of them oblivious to my presence just yards away. Now, hidden in the shadows of the concrete column, I watched as Vanessa's hand moved from Neil's arm to his face, a gentle touch that he didn't pull away from. I felt the world tilt sideways, reality distorting around me as everything I thought I knew rearranged itself into this new, terrible configuration. I could storm over there now, confront them both, create a scene that would shatter this moment of intimacy and force the truth into the open. Part of me wanted to, the part that felt the hot flush of betrayal rising up my neck and burning behind my eyes. But another cooler part held me back. The part that needed to understand the full scope of what I was seeing before I acted. The part that couldn't quite believe that the two people I had trusted most professionally and personally would betray me so completely. So instead of charging forward, I slipped my phone from my pocket and took several photos of them in the car. Evidence, proof that I wasn't imagining things, that I wasn't being paranoid. Then I retreated to my own car, parked on the opposite side of the lot, and waited. 20 minutes passed before the Audi's interior light went out and its headlights flashed on. I slouched down in my seat as the car pulled out of its space and drove slowly toward the exit. Neither of them looked in my direction. As they passed under the parking lot lights, I could see Neil driving and Vanessa in the passenger seat, her profile turned toward him, still talking. They were leaving together. At nearly 11 at night, when Neil was supposed to be playing cards with his brother, I started my engine but didn't follow immediately. Instead, I drove to the building entrance using my badge to access the lobby. The security guard, Ramon, looked up from his crossword puzzle with surprise. "Ms. Bennett? Forget something?" "My phone," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Left it charging at my desk. Need me to come up with you?" "No, I'll be quick." The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt surreal. My body was on autopilot while my mind raced through every interaction between Neil and Vanessa that I could remember, searching for clues I might have missed. By the time I reached my desk and unplugged my phone, my hands were shaking. The device came to life with a soft chime, and notifications began flooding in. 3 missed calls from Neil, time-stamped before he'd supposedly left for his brother's. A text from him that read, "Running late. We'll head straight to Jake's from work. Love you." I opened my Photos app and stared at the images I'd just taken. In one, Vanessa's face was clearly visible, illuminated by the car's interior light as she leaned toward Neil. I zoomed in on her expression, intent, earnest, her lips parted mid-sentence. Neil's face was partially turned away from me, but his body language was open to her, receptive. What had they been discussing so intensely? Why the lie about poker night? I scrolled through my recent messages with Neil, looking for patterns, for other potential lies. Nothing stood out immediately, but everything now felt suspect. Had he been meeting her secretly all along? Was the harbor project just a convenient cover? My phone buzzed with a new text. Neil again. "Game broke up early. Heading home now? Need anything?" Another lie. I'd just seen him drive off with Vanessa, going somewhere that clearly wasn't our home. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, tempted to confront him immediately, but I held back. If I revealed what I knew now, I'd never discover the full extent of their deception. Instead, I typed, "Just found my phone at work." On my way home, too. "See you there." His response came quickly. "Great timing. Drive safe." The heart emoji felt like a mockery. I pocketed my phone and made my way back to the elevator, nodding absently to Ramon on my way out. In my car, I sat motionless, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to drive home and wait for Neil, to see what other lies he might tell to my face. But another part needed answers now. I opened my contacts and called Jake, Neil's brother. "Elena?" He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice muffled by background noise. "Everything okay?" "Hey, Jake, sorry to bother you." "Is Neil still there?" A pause. "Neil?" "He's not here." My stomach clenched. "He didn't show up for poker night?" "Poker night?" Jake sounded confused. "That's next week. We're just having a beer, me and Tara." Tara was Jake's wife. They'd been high school sweethearts, married for 15 years without a hint of drama. In this moment, I envied their simple, honest relationship with an intensity that made my chest ache. "Oh, I must have mixed up the dates," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. "Sorry to interrupt your evening." "No problem." "You sure everything's okay? You sound strange." "Just tired." "Talk soon." I ended the call and sat in the stillness of my car, the reality of Neil's deception settling over me like a heavy blanket. He hadn't even bothered to coordinate his lie with Jake. Had he become so confident in my trust, so certain I wouldn't check, that he'd grown careless? Or was tonight unusual, an emergency meeting that required a hasty excuse? No, the way they'd looked at each other in the car wasn't professional emergency. It was personal, intimate. My phone rang, startling me. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. My boss, the woman who'd just driven off with my husband, was calling me at 11 o'clock at night. My heart raced as I answered, keeping my voice neutral with effort. Hello? Elena, I'm so sorry to call this late. Her voice sounded normal, professional. No hint of guilt or awkwardness. I just realized I left some edits unsigned on the Mason feature, and we need to send it to print first thing tomorrow. I closed my eyes, picturing her in the passenger seat of Neil's car as she made this call. Was he sitting beside her, listening to her lie so smoothly to his wife? I can handle it first thing in the morning, I said carefully. Where are the edits? On my desk, but she hesitated. I'm actually heading back to the office now. I was at dinner nearby and remembered. If you're still there, could you wait 5 minutes? She was coming back. With Neil, they hadn't realized I might still be in the parking lot. I'm actually just leaving, I said, making a split-second decision. But I can turn around if it's urgent. Would you? I'd really appreciate it. I'll be there in less than 5. The call ended, and I sat perfectly still, processing what was happening. Vanessa was returning to the office with my husband, neither of them knowing I had seen them together. Neither of them aware that I knew about Neil's poker night lie. I started my car and moved it to a different section of the lot, where I could observe the entrance without being immediately visible. Within minutes, the silver Audi pulled in and parked near the front doors. Both Vanessa and Neil got out. He remained by the car while she hurried inside, presumably to meet me. I watched Neil check his watch and then his phone. Was he texting me again? Creating another layer of lies to cover their tracks? I was too far away to see his expression clearly, but his posture was tense, his movements agitated as he paced beside the car. My phone buzzed with a new message from Neil. Home soon. Traffic on the bridge. The casual lie made something snap inside me. Before I could reconsider, I was out of my car and walking toward him, my steps quick and purposeful on the asphalt. He didn't notice me until I was about 20 feet away, and when he looked up, his face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then unmistakable alarm. Elena? His voice cracked slightly. What are you doing here? I stopped a few paces from him, acutely aware of the physical distance between us that somehow seemed to represent the emotional gulf that had opened up without my knowledge. I forgot my phone at work, I said, holding it up like evidence in a trial. But you already knew that, didn't you? Since you've been texting me about poker night and traffic on a bridge you're not even crossing. Neil's face drained of color. I can explain. Save it. My voice was surprisingly steady. Vanessa called me back here for some urgent edits. She's expecting me inside. Does she know I saw you both earlier? Or were you planning to keep pretending? He took a step toward me, hands raised in a placating gesture. Elena, this isn't what it looks like. We're working on something at 11 at night. In your car? When you told me you were at your brother's? Each question felt like a nail being driven into the coffin of our marriage. I called Jake. There was no poker game tonight. Neil's shoulders sagged. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd once found endearing. We should talk about this at home. Not here. Why? Afraid Vanessa might come out and complicate your story? I was surprised by the bitter edge in my voice, by the anger rising to replace the initial shock. How long has it been going on? The harbor project? Before that? Nothing is going on, he insisted, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. We're working on a surprise. For you. I actually laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound that scraped my throat raw. A surprise? That's what you're going with? It's the truth. He looked almost desperate now. Ask Vanessa. Oh, I intend to. I moved past him toward the building entrance, but he caught my arm, his grip firm but not painful. "Elena, wait, please." Something in his tone made me pause. Not the panic or the pleading, but an underlying note of, what? Determination? Resolve? 5 minutes, I said coldly. "You have 5 minutes to explain why you're sneaking around with my boss, and it better be good." Neil glanced toward the building entrance, then back at me. "Not here," he repeated. "Let's sit in the car." I followed him reluctantly, maintaining enough distance that he couldn't touch me again. The interior of his Audi still held the lingering scent of Vanessa's perfume, something floral and expensive that I'd always secretly envied. I sat rigidly in the passenger seat where she had been minutes earlier. "Start talking," I said when he hesitated. Neil gripped the steering wheel, though the engine wasn't running. "I've been meeting with Vanessa to discuss a project. A personal one." "I have photos of you two together tonight," I cut in, unwilling to let him construct some elaborate lie. "The way she touched your face wasn't professional, Neil." He closed his eyes briefly. "You're right. It wasn't professional. It was emotional. For both of us." The confirmation hit like a physical blow, stealing my breath. Despite the evidence, despite my suspicions, some part of me had been clinging to the possibility of an innocent explanation. "How long?" I managed. "It's not what you think," he insisted. "We're not having an affair." "Then what would you call it?" Neil turned in his seat to face me fully. Vanessa's brother had a rare form of lymphoma, the same kind that killed my father. She recognized the signs when we first talked about my dad at the company barbecue. She's been helping me process some things I never dealt with properly when he died. I stared at him, trying to reconcile this explanation with what I'd seen. "You expect me to believe you've been having secret therapy sessions with my boss?" "Not therapy, just conversations. Her brother survived. My dad didn't. She understands things that even you can't. Elena, because you didn't lose a parent that way. Implication that there was a part of his grief I couldn't access, that Vanessa somehow could, stung almost as much as the deception itself. And these conversations had to happen in secret? With lies about poker games?" Neil had the grace to look ashamed. "Tonight wasn't planned. I was genuinely heading to Jake's when Vanessa called. She'd found some experimental treatment information that might have saved my dad if it had been available then. I wasn't in a good place after seeing it. I couldn't go to poker like that, and I didn't want to worry you. So instead you lied to me." My voice was flat. "And she what? Offered to meet you in our company parking lot to comfort you?" She was working late. Said she could share what she'd found in person before she went home. "I didn't plan to stay long, just hear her out." He rubbed his face tiredly. "Then you texted about forgetting your phone, and I panicked thinking you might come back and misinterpret things." "Misinterpret?" I echoed incredulously. "You lied about where you were. You've been secretly meeting my boss." She touched your face in a way that was definitely not professional. "What exactly am I misinterpreting?" Before Neil could answer, the car was flooded with light as the passenger door opened. Vanessa stood there, her expression shifting from surprise to understanding as she took in the tableau before her. "Elena," she said, her composure only slightly rattled. "I didn't realize you were already here." "Clearly," I replied, making no move to exit the car. "Neil was just explaining your secret meetings to discuss his father's cancer. The ones you never mentioned to me, despite our daily interactions." Vanessa's gaze moved from me to Neil, something unspoken passing between them that only intensified my suspicions. "I see." She adjusted the strap of her designer bag on her shoulder. "Perhaps we should all talk inside." "The security cameras?" "I don't care about the security cameras," I interrupted. "I care about my husband and my boss conspiring behind my back while lying to my face." "What did you really call me back here for, Vanessa? There are no urgent edits, are there?" She hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, I saw the truth. There had never been any edits needing signatures. It had been a ploy to get me here, or to create an excuse for her return to the office with Neil. "No," she admitted finally. "There aren't. But we do need to talk." Then talk. I crossed my arms, bracing for whatever revelation was coming. Vanessa looked at Neil again, who nodded slightly. Then she turned back to me. Neil and I haven't just been discussing his father's illness. We've been working on something else too, something we wanted to surprise you with. You keep saying that, I said wearily. What kind of surprise requires lies and secret meetings? Vanessa reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, offering it to me. This kind. I took it reluctantly, aware of both of them watching me as I opened it. Inside were architectural renderings. Neil's work, unmistakably, of a modern building with sweeping glass walls and a central courtyard. The plans were labeled Meridian Creative Annex, future home of the Elena Bennett School of Design. I looked up, confused. What is this? It's what we've been planning, Neil said quietly. A design school to be housed in Meridian's new creative annex. Named after you. I flipped through more pages, curriculum outlines, budget projections, a letter of intent signed by Charles Winters, Meridian's CEO. I don't understand, I said slowly. Why would there be a school named after me? Vanessa moved closer, crouching beside the open car door. Because you're brilliant, Elena. Because the work you've done has transformed how Meridian approaches visual storytelling. Because I've shown your portfolios to the board, and they agree that your design philosophy should be the foundation of our educational outreach program. And you couldn't tell me about this because we wanted it finalized before the announcement, Neil explained. Charles insisted on keeping it confidential until the funding was secured. If word got out prematurely and the money fell through, it would have been embarrassing for everyone. But mostly, Vanessa added, because Neil wanted to surprise you with something meaningful. He came to me after your promotion and asked how he could contribute to your professional legacy. This was what we came up with. I stared at the renderings again, trying to process what they were saying against the backdrop of my suspicions. So the harbor project is real, Neil confirmed. But it's also where the annex will be built. I couldn't tell you that part. And tonight? I pressed, still not ready to let go of what I'd seen. The way you were together in the car. That looked personal, Vanessa. Very personal. She had the grace to look embarrassed. We'd just gotten confirmation that the final donor had committed. The school is happening, Elena. I was emotional. Neil has worked so hard on this, pushing the designs through countless revisions to make sure it reflected your aesthetic. You touched his face, I said bluntly. I did, she acknowledged. It was inappropriate and I apologize. I was caught up in the moment. We've spent months on this project, working late, keeping this secret from someone we both care about deeply, albeit in different ways. I looked between them, searching for signs of deception, for the telltale markers of an affair being hastily repackaged as a professional project. But the evidence in my hands was substantial. The renderings were detailed, professional, weeks of work at minimum. The curriculum outline had clearly been developed by someone who intimately understood my design approach. Why all the secrecy tonight specifically? I asked Neil. The fake poker game? The panicked texts when I said I was coming to get my phone? Neil sighed heavily. The donor meeting ran late. We were supposed to meet Vanessa here to sign the final paperwork. Then I'd head to Jake's. When you texted about coming to the office, I panicked. I wasn't supposed to be here. The surprise would have been ruined. So you lied. The hurt in my voice was evident. I made a bad call, he admitted. I thought I could finish with Vanessa and be gone before you arrived. Then when you texted that you'd found your phone, I assumed you'd already been and gone. I didn't realize you'd seen us. Vanessa straightened up, her professional demeanor reasserting itself. The fault is partially mine. I encouraged the secrecy perhaps more than necessary. The politics at Meridian are complicated. Having the CEO's support doesn't mean everyone is on board. I closed the folder, still processing. So you've been meeting secretly for months to plan a design school named after me. And tonight you were celebrating its funding approval. They both nodded. And the touching, the intimate conversation I witnessed, that was just professional excitement? Vanessa and Neil exchanged another look, briefer this time, but still enough to make my insecurities flare. Not entirely professional, Vanessa admitted carefully. But not what you're thinking either. Neil shared some things about his father tonight, how proud he would have been of this project, of the work you've done. It was an emotional conversation. And yes, I did help Neil process some of his grief, she continued. My brother's recovery from lymphoma was something of a miracle. I understand survivor's guilt, the why him and not my loved one question. It wasn't therapy, just shared experience. I sat silently, weighing their explanation against my fears. The project was real, the paperwork too detailed to be fabricated on short notice. But the emotional connection between them was also real, evident in the way they communicated without words, in the easy familiarity they'd developed while working on this secret together. I need some time, I said finally, gathering the folder and my purse. This is a lot to process. Of course, Vanessa said, stepping back to let me exit the car. The announcement isn't scheduled until next month. Take all the time you need. Neil reached for my hand as I moved to leave. Elena, I'm sorry. For lying, for making you doubt us. That was never my intention. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. We'll talk at home. As I walked to my car, I heard Vanessa say something to Neil in a low voice, followed by the sound of her heels clicking away across the asphalt. Neil remained by his car, watching me go, his expression a mixture of regret and uncertainty. I sat in my car for a long moment, looking at the folder on the passenger seat. A school bearing my name, a professional legacy, a husband who had worked behind the scenes to make it happen. It should have been a dream come true. Instead, I felt hollow, the initial shock and anger giving way to a more complex emotion I couldn't quite name. Trust, once broken, doesn't reassemble easily, and something had broken tonight, regardless of the explanation. Something that would require more than architectural renderings and professional opportunities to repair. I started my car and drove toward home, unsure if Neil would follow immediately or give me the space I clearly needed. As I merged onto the empty highway, my phone buzzed with a text from him. I'm so sorry. I'll be home soon if you want to talk. Or I can stay with Jake if you need space. At least this time, I thought tiredly. He wasn't lying about where he could go. 3 weeks later, I stood at the edge of the harbor construction site, watching workers position steel beams for what would eventually become the Meridian Creative Annex. Neil's renderings had been approved, and preliminary construction had begun with surprising speed. Charles Winters was eager to announce the project before the end of the fiscal year. What do you think? Neil asked, standing a careful distance from me. The space between us had become symbolic of the emotional gap we were still working to bridge. Does it look like you imagined? I studied the skeletal beginnings of the structure, trying to see past the dirt and machinery to the elegant glass-walled building in the renderings. It's too early to tell, I said honestly. But the foundation looks solid, Neil nodded, understanding my double meaning. We'd spent the past weeks in a delicate dance of reconstruction, of trust, of communication, of the relationship we both wanted to preserve, but couldn't simply return to unchanged. The night of the parking lot confrontation, we'd talked until dawn. Neil had shown me every email, every text between him and Vanessa related to the project. He'd called Jake on speakerphone to explain why he'd lied about poker night. He'd answered every question I asked, patiently and without defensiveness. I believed him about the project. The evidence was irrefutable, especially after Charles Winters called me personally the following day to apologize for the secrecy and congratulate me on the school that would bear my name. But belief didn't erase the doubt entirely. Trust, once questioned, develops a certain brittleness that takes time to anneal. Did you mean what you said last night? Neil asked, breaking into my thoughts. About teaching the inaugural masterclass? I nodded. I've been drafting the curriculum. Visual narrative across multiple platforms. Vanessa thinks we should offer it to professionals first, then expand to include students. The mention of Vanessa no longer triggered immediate tension between us. I'd had several frank conversations with her as well, establishing new boundaries while acknowledging the reality of our continuing professional relationship. She'd offered to recuse herself from direct oversight of my work, but that felt like an overreaction to a situation that was gradually resolving itself. She mentioned you might want to reduce your regular hours at Meridian to focus on the school development, Neil said carefully. We've discussed it, I confirmed. It would mean more time working directly with you on the spatial design elements. Is that something you're comfortable with? The question contained multitudes. Was I comfortable working closely with him again? Did I trust his professional judgment? His personal fidelity? Had we rebuilt enough to collaborate on something that would become part of both our legacies? I think so, I said after a moment. One step at a time, Neil smiled, a cautious expression, hopeful but not presumptuous. That's all I'm asking for. We turned back to watch the construction, standing side by side as a massive crane hoisted another steel beam into position. Workers guided it with calls and hand signals until it settled into its designated place in the growing framework. It's strange, I said. Watching something take shape that's partially yours, but that you didn't design yourself. Neil glanced at me. That's how I felt about us these past weeks. Like we're rebuilding something together, but the blueprint has changed. For the better, I hope. I think so. He hesitated, then added, the original design had some structural weaknesses. Communication issues. Hidden supports that weren't properly secured. I appreciated his architectural metaphor. It was easier sometimes to discuss our relationship obliquely, through the professional language we both understood. The new design is more transparent, I offered, more honest about its weaknesses and strengths. Less likely to collapse under pressure, Neil agreed. He tentatively reached for my hand, and after a moment, I let him take it. We stood like that, hand in hand, watching the building slowly take form before us. Not the building we had originally imagined, perhaps, but something potentially stronger. Something built with more awareness of its vulnerabilities. Something designed to last. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a calendar reminder for my meeting with Vanessa and the curriculum development team. I showed Neil the screen. Duty calls, he said, releasing my hand reluctantly. I'll see you at home, I promised. We can continue that conversation about the interior layout. The one about the classroom configuration, or the one about whether we should repaint the bedroom? I smiled, recognizing his attempt to normalize, to gently navigate us back to the easy domestic partnership we'd once taken for granted. Both, maybe. If there's time. As I walked back to my car, I glanced over my shoulder once. Neil stood silhouetted against the construction site, watching me go. 3 weeks ago, in another parking lot, that sight might have filled me with dread and suspicion. Today, it felt like a promise, not of perfection or complete resolution, but of continued effort. Of choosing day by day to rebuild what had been damaged but not destroyed. The Elena Bennett School of Design would open its doors in 18 months, according to the project timeline. Our marriage, the new, more honest version of it, was on a less defined schedule. Some days felt like progress, others like setbacks. But we were both still showing up to the construction site, still committed to the blueprint we were redrafting together. And for now, that commitment was foundation enough.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.